Welcome everyone to our weekly Sunday Dhamma session. Today we have Venerable Sumana with us. Venerable Bhante Sumana is an American novice monk who currently lives in Sri Lanka. He was born and raised in Washington, D.C., USA, and became a Buddhist at the age of 18. As a layperson, he attended meditation retreats in the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition and with Most Venerable Yogavachar Rahula Mahathera, the former vice abbot of the Bhavna Society in West Virginia, and the current director of the Panyasiha Lion of Wisdom Meditation Center near Maryland, USA. He was also involved in a prominent Buddhist group at the Washington Buddhist Vihar in Washington, D.C., and had the opportunity to visit Forest Dhamma Monastery in the Thai forest tradition of Ajahn Mahabua in southwestern Virginia. Venerable Sumana was ordained in the Burmese tradition in 2021 and spent time training with Sayadaw U Tejinda and Sayadaw U Aganya of the Pa Au tradition in California before relocating to Sri Lanka to train in the forest tradition there. He considers Venerable Denmark Nandadeepa to be a primary inspiration of his practice. May I please welcome you, Bhante, for the Dhamma session today. The talk is based on Raṭṭhapāla Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, number 82. Thank you, Bhante.
Terawan Saranai. This is Venerable American Sumana from the United States of America. And just wanted to make a video for Dhamma USA speaking about the Raṭṭhapāla Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya and Saddha, or faith. Saddha is the Pali word for faith. So just thought that we could start by paying homage to Lord Buddha and taking refuge in the Triple Gem. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. So, tonight's Dhamma discussion is about the Raṭṭhapāla Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya and its relation to Saddha, or faith. And so the Raṭṭhapāla Sutta is a very profound sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses of Lord Buddha. And so in this particular sutta, there is a clansman by the name of Raṭṭhapāla. And so this clansman, Raṭṭhapāla, he goes with a group of people to go see Lord Buddha. And they listen to a Dhamma discussion by Lord Buddha. And so during this Dhamma discussion given to them by Lord Buddha, Raṭṭhapāla, this clansman, gains faith, saddha, and conviction in the Dhamma. and he decides that he wants to go forth. He wants to become a monk. And so he realizes, during this Dhamma discussion given by Lord Buddha, that all things in the world are impermanent, suffering, and not self. And so he gains faith and conviction in Lord Buddha, in the Dhamma, and in the Sangha during this Dhamma discussion given by Lord Buddha, and he decides that he wants to go forth and become a monk. He wants to ordain and become a monk. That's what he decides. And so he goes up to Lord Buddha after the discussion, and he says, I want to be ordained. I want to become a monk. And so Lord Buddha tells him, or asks him, Raṭṭhapāla, he asks him, do you have your parents' permission to go forth, to ordain? And Raṭṭhapāla says, no, I don't, and Lord Buddha says to him, Raṭṭhapāla, Tathagatas do not give the going forth to those who have not obtained their parents' permission. As some of you may know, that is one of the requirements to go forth, to ordain as a monk, is that you need to first receive your parents' permission to go forth, to ordain. So your parents have to be okay with you ordaining. They have to say that they accept you becoming a monk. They have to give you their permission to become a monk in order for you to get ordained. So Raṭṭhapāla did not have his parents' permission at that time. So Lord Buddha told him, you cannot get the going forth. You cannot ordain until you get your parents' permission. And so Raṭṭhapāla goes home and he sees his parents and he tells them that he wants to ordain. He wants to become a monk. And so his parents say to him, no, Raṭṭhapāla, you're our only son. You can enjoy wealth and sensual pleasures and make merit. We cannot allow you to go forth. We cannot allow you to ordain. You are our only son. And you know nothing of suffering. They say these things to him. We cannot allow you to ordain. Enjoy yourself with sensual pleasures and make merit. That's what they tell him, is to enjoy sensual pleasures and make merit. That is what Raṭṭhapāla's parents say to him. And so Raṭṭhapāla decides that the only thing that he wants in life is to ordain and become a monk and practice the Dhamma and attain Nibbana. So he decides that he will lie down and he will not eat. And essentially, he will starve himself. And either one of two things will happen. He will get his parents' approval to ordain and become a monk, or he will die. He decides that one of those two things will happen. And so he lies down and he begins to starve himself. He refuses to eat food, to eat any food. And so his parents, they're concerned about this. And so they keep saying, we're not going to allow you to ordain. And so Raṭṭhapāla, he remains firm in his desire to ordain, to become a monk. And so he continues to lay there and not eat any food. And he decides, either I will get my parents' approval to ordain and become a monk, or I will die. One of those two things will happen. And so his parents, after some time of this happening, his parents request to his friends that they speak to him, that they speak to Raṭṭhapāla. They ask Raṭṭhapāla's friends to speak to him and more or less, and get him to not do this anymore, to give up, his desire to ordain, to give up, starving himself. And so his parents, Raṭṭhapāla's parents, they ask his friends to get him to stop all this. And so what happens is his friends, Raṭṭhapāla's friends, try to, or attempt to, get him to give all this up. They try to convince him to stop wanting to ordain. But Raṭṭhapāla has so much faith that he remains firm, and he continues to lie down there. He continues to lay there and not eat any food, and he refuses all of the attempts by his parents and his friends to get him to give up his desire to ordain. And so what happens afterwards is his friends, after failing to get him to give all this up, after failing to get him to give up his desire to ordain, they go to his parents. Raṭṭhapāla's friends go to his parents, and they say, we can't get him to stop all this. And so his parents end up approving of him going forth and ordaining, becoming a monk. They say, okay, he can become a monk, but he has to visit us. Once he becomes a monk, he has to visit us. And so Raṭṭhapāla then goes back to Lord Buddha, and he says to him, I now have my parents' approval to ordain, and I want to ordain. And so Lord Buddha gives him the going forth and the acceptance. Lord Buddha gives him ordination, and Raṭṭhapāla becomes a monk. He becomes Venerable Raṭṭhapāla. And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, practices after his ordination. He strives, in his practice, he strives on. He practices with sincerity and effort, and he attains arahantship. He attains nibbana. And so afterwards, he decides to go back home and visit his parents, and Lord Buddha examines his mind and sees that he, has attained nibbana. He is now enlightened, and he will not, there is no chance of him disrobing and going back to lay life. So Lord Buddha consents to him going back home and seeing his parents. Lord Buddha gives permission to Venerable Raṭṭhapāla to go back home and see his parents. And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla goes back home, and he, approaches, or what happens when he goes home is that he is going for pindapata. He is going for alms when he goes back home. And his father sees him, and he, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla is now a monk. He's no longer the lay person Raṭṭhapāla. He's now a monk, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla. And so, he now has a shaved head, And so his father, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's own father, says, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's own father doesn't recognize him. And he says, oh, these bald-pated, padded, or these bald-headed recluses, these padded recluses or bald-headed recluses, they are the ones who made our son go forth, ordain, and give up the household life. This is what his father says. And so essentially, his own father doesn't recognize him. Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's own father does not recognize him. And he also verbally abuses him. He is upset at the fact that his son has ordained and become a monk. And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, however, does receive from one of his parents' slave women some old porridge. So he takes that porridge and he eats it. And so this slave woman, this slave woman, who is a slave woman of Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's parents, she recognizes him. She says, oh, this is Raṭṭhapāla. She can tell that this is Raṭṭhapāla. She recognizes him even though he's now a monk. And so she says to his mother, your son, Raṭṭhapāla, has come home. And so his parents find out that it's him. And his father goes to him and says, oh, why didn't you come to our house? And Raṭṭhapāla says to him, householder, we're homeless. We don't have a home. We received nothing but abuse from you, verbal abuse from you. And so, he says that to his father, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, householder, how could we have a home? We are homeless. Buddhist monks are homeless. They don't live in a home. And so he says that to his father, householder, we are homeless. We don't have a home. We did not receive anything from you except abuse, verbal abuse. And so his father said, come and have some food, and Venerable Raṭṭhapāla says to him, householder, I've had my meal for the day. And then his father says to him, okay, dear Raṭṭhapāla, please come to, our house tomorrow and have your meal there tomorrow. And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla consents, and he decides to go eat his meal at his parents' home the next day. And so the next day he goes to his parents' home for his meal. But his father has very mischievously, perhaps one could say, hatched a plan to try to get his son, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, to disrobe and return to lay life. He's, upset that his son is a monk. He doesn't like the fact that his son is a monk, and he wants his son, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, to disrobe and return to lay life. And so he hatches up a plan to get his son, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, to disrobe and return to lay life. And so one of the things he does is he has some of the family's wealth in the home, and he plans to show it to Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, his son, to lure him away from monastic life and back into lay life with this promise of wealth, this promise of material gain, of material property and possessions. And so also what he does is he asks Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's former wives from lay life to adorn themselves with all the ornaments that Venerable Raṭṭhapāla used to find, you know, appeasing and attractive when he was a lay person. And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's father hatches this plan to convince his son, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, to disrobe and return to lay life by showing him some of the family's wealth and promising Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, his son, that he will have this wealth if he disrobes and returns to lay life. And also, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's father has Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's former wives from lay life adorn themselves with these ornaments that Venerable Raṭṭhapāla found appeasing and attractive when he was a lay person. So this is his father's plan. This is Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's father's plan to convince his son, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, to disrobe and return to lay life. Because again, he does not like the fact that his son is a monk. And so the next morning or the next day, when Venerable Raṭṭhapāla goes to his family's home, his parents' home, to eat his meal there, his father shows him the wealth that belongs to his Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's family, and he promises Venerable Raṭṭhapāla that this wealth will be his if he disrobes and returns to lay life. And also in the house, are Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's former wives from lay life, adorned, in these ornaments that he used to find appeasing and attractive when he was a lay person, when Venerable Raṭṭhapāla was a lay person. And so what Venerable Raṭṭhapāla says to his father when his father offers him this wealth that belongs to the family in exchange for him disrobing and returning to lay life is, householder, throw this. This is essentially what Venerable Raṭṭhapāla says to his father: his householder, throw all this wealth away, throw all of it away, because it's only the source of suffering for you. This wealth that you are showing me here, that you have here, is only a source of suffering for you. So it would be better for you to just throw it all away. He's not moved. He's not shaken by this. Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, he has already attained arahantship. And so he is incapable of disrobing and returning to lay life. And so then his former wives from lay life, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's former wives from lay life, what they do is they go up to him, they get down on their knees, they clasp his feet, and they say, what are those, this is what they say to him, is, what are those nymphs like that you go forth for? So they're saying, oh, you must have gone forth for some nymphs. Who are these, nymphs? Who are these nymphs? And, one could assume that these imagined nymphs would be very beautiful. And so these former wives of Venerable Raṭṭhapāla from his lay life grab his feet and they say, what are these nymphs? What are these nymphs that you go forth for like? And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla responds to his former wives by saying, sisters, we don't go forth for nymphs. We don't go forth for the sake of nymphs. And Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's former wives from lay life are astonished by this. Sisters, he calls us, they say. And they faint. They literally faint. His former wives from lay life literally faint, after hearing him call them sisters. Essentially he doesn't find them attractive anymore. He's completely overcome his sexual desire. And so he doesn't find them attractive anymore. And so they're very upset about this, the fact that their former husband doesn't find them attractive or appealing anymore. And so they faint, literally they faint. His former wives from lay life, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla's former wives from lay life, literally faint when he calls them sisters. And so further after that, what happens is that Venerable Raṭṭhapāla says to his father, householder, if there is a meal to be given, give it to us. Do not harass us. Essentially, give the food. If you have food, let me have the meal. Let me have my meal. Don't harass me. I'm not disrobing. I'm not going back to lay life. And so his father then gives up, his efforts to try and convince his son, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, to disrobe and return to lay life. And he serves Venerable Raṭṭhapāla his meal, his food, and Venerable Raṭṭhapāla eats the food, and then he leaves his parents' home. And in the second part of this sutta, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla is talking to a king. And this king is asking Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, what made you go forth? He is asking Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, what made you go forth? What made you ordain? And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, and the king is saying to him that, oh, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, you essentially what the king is saying to Venerable Raṭṭhapāla is, oh, you didn't have any hardships, or you haven't experienced any hardships dying relatives or anything like that, loss of wealth, loss of relatives. You haven't had these things, and so why have you gone forth and ordained? Why have you become a monk? And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla was saying in response to this king that, the Blessed One, Lord Buddha, was explaining some things. He was, he's referring to, Lord Buddha's teachings, and essentially what Venerable Raṭṭhapāla says to this king is that he realized when Lord Buddha was, what Venerable Raṭṭhapāla realized based on Lord Buddha's teachings is that life is unstable and insecure, and it's full of suffering. It's unstable, it's insecure, and it's full of suffering. And, he realized, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, that all things are impermanent, suffering, and not self. And so when he realized that life is unstable and insecure and full of suffering, he got this desire to go forth and ordain and become a monk. He developed this desire to become a monk. And so that's what Venerable Raṭṭhapāla explains to this king in the second part of the sutta. And so Venerable Raṭṭhapāla was praised by Lord Buddha as the foremost of his disciples when it comes to going forth or ordaining out of faith. As we can see from the first part of the sutta, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla, he gave himself essentially two options. He essentially gave himself two options. Either I will get my parents' permission to ordain, or I will die. And so, he was starving himself, not eating any food, trying to convince his parents to give him their permission for him to ordain. So he decided, Venerable Raṭṭhapāla decided that he would either go forth, ordain, and become a monk, or he would die. Those were the two options he gave himself. And so Lord Buddha praised Venerable Raṭṭhapāla as being the foremost of his disciples when it comes to ordaining out of faith. The foremost among his disciples when it comes to ordaining out of faith. And so this sutta, the Raṭṭhapāla Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses of Lord Buddha, is a wonderful reminder to all of us of not just the benefits of saddha or faith, having faith in Lord Buddha and his teachings, the Dhamma, but also the absolute necessity of having faith, of having saddha or faith on this path. Essentially, saddha or faith underlines the entire path. It is the backbone in many regards. It is the entire backbone of the path. In many regards, it is the backbone of the entire path. And so we need to think about this. If one does not have faith, then how will they ever practice the Dhamma? How will they ever be able to attain Nibbana if they do not have faith? If they do not have faith, how will they ever be able to attain Nibbana? How will they ever be able to even so much as sit to meditate for even just a little while? How will they ever be able to read a sutta? How will they ever be able to progress along this path in any way, shape, or form if they do not have saddha or faith? And so saddha or faith, saddha is the Pali word for faith. Saddha or faith underlines essentially the entire path and is the backbone of the entire path in many regards. And one needs faith, one needs saddha or faith, and a whole lot of it too, in order to be able to progress along this path and attain Nibbana, which is the goal of Lord Buddha's teachings. And so one of the ways that one can develop faith, saddha or faith in the Dhamma, is they can reflect on, for one, how the Dhamma addresses concerns about life and about the human existence in ways that essentially no other religion or spiritual path does. So the Dhamma, Lord Buddha's teachings, addresses many of the questions about life that essentially all other religions and spiritual paths cannot address, are unable to address. So Lord Buddha, taught the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, the truth that suffering comes from craving, clinging, and attachment, the truth that there is cessation of suffering, that there is an ending to suffering, that there is an end of suffering, and the truth that the Noble Eightfold Path is the way out of suffering, is the way to ending suffering. And so these are teachings, just the Four Noble Truths alone. These are teachings that are not found in any other religion or spiritual path in the world. So just that alone can tell one can tell just from reading the Four Noble Truths or hearing about the Four Noble Truths, that this path, these teachings, this Dhamma that Lord Buddha taught, it really means something. It really deeply means something. And there clearly, this man, Lord Buddha, clearly he knew what he was talking about. If he is saying what absolutely is the truth, that's why the Four Noble Truths are called the Four Noble Truths, because they are the truth. They are undeniable truths. If one just looks around in the world, one will be able to observe these Four Noble Truths, that they are real, that they are the truth, and so, and in the Dhamma. And so, back to an earlier point, which is that saddha, or faith, essentially underlines the entire path and is the backbone of the entire path in many regards. Again, if one does not have faith, it is impossible for them to progress on this path in any way, shape, or form. How can one read a sutta or sit down to meditate, even just for a short while, if they do not have any faith in Lord Buddha and in the Dhamma, if they do not have any saddha? These things are impossible. Progress on the path is impossible if one does not have saddha or faith. And one needs to have a whole lot of saddha or faith as well. One needs to begin revolving their entire life around the Dhamma, around Lord Buddha's teachings. One needs to begin revolving their entire life around the Dhamma, Lord Buddha's teachings, if they want or wish to make real and lasting progress on this path. And that is important to point out, since Lord Buddha's teachings, the Dhamma, are not a religion in the traditional sense. You just pray or do, some superstitious rites and rituals, and you get something out of this as a result of, praying or doing some rituals. that is not the Dhamma. That is not what Lord Buddha taught. Lord Buddha, taught the Dhamma as a way of life. It's a practice. It's a way of life. Lord Buddha taught the Dhamma as a practice and as a way of life. So one needs to begin revolving their entire life around the Dhamma, around Lord Buddha's teachings, if they wish to make real and lasting progress on this path. And so one can begin to, in order to do that, one can begin to listen to Dhamma talks more instead of maybe watching TV or playing video games. One can begin to listen to more Dhamma talks and watch more Dhamma talks. One can begin to read more Dhamma books, read the teachings of different monks, read the suttas, read the suttas and Vinaya. One can begin to read the suttas and Vinaya more. Which are the original teachings of Lord Buddha. And so one can also begin to go to the temple or the monastery more often. One can begin to offer dana more often to the monks or nuns, to the sangha. One can begin to help temples and monasteries with repairs more often, or volunteer their time and help at temples and monasteries more often. One can practice the Dhamma regularly, on a consistent, regular basis, every day. One can observe the precepts, observe Sila every single day, at least the 5 precepts. And one can visit temples and monasteries on a more regular basis, attend meditation retreats, sutta classes, meditation retreats. One more often, more regularly, one can begin to practice meditation more regularly every day in their life, every day. And this way one can begin to revolve their entire life around the Dhamma. And so, of course, doing these things can also give one saddha or faith in the Dhamma, in Lord Buddha and in the Dhamma. One may be able to hear an inspiring Dhamma talk from a particular monk or nun. So that can arouse saddha or faith. And also, one can reflect on the effort that they are making in their practice by sitting to meditate every day, or offering dana regularly, or observing sila regularly, observing the precepts regularly, and not breaking them. One can reflect on their effort to do these things, and that can give one saddha or faith as well. Seeing how it is possible to, in the very least, attempt to do these things. It can prove to one that I can do this. It can prove to one that they have the ability to do these things. And so Another topic to mention, or another subject to mention, is that there was, he died in 2020 from terminal cancer, but there was a forest monk from Denmark who lived in Sri Lanka for many years. He passed away from terminal cancer in 2020 at Dalagala Aranya in Sri Lanka. And his name, again, he was from Denmark. His name was Venerable Jnanadeepa Mahathera, and he was a very senior Western monk. If I'm not mistaken, he was the most senior Western monk in Sri Lanka when he passed away at the time of his death. And he was known, Venerable Jnanadeepa was known for his very austere and reclusive life. And what he proved to many monks, many people, monks and lay people, is that it is possible not only to strive towards Nibbana in this life itself, but what he proved with his practice, what Venerable Jnanadeepa proved with his practice, is that it is possible to strive with all one's might towards Nibbana in this life itself. A path of total commitment and dedication to the practice is possible. And, a life devoted to putting an end to suffering is possible. And so Venerable Jnanadeepa had a lot of saddha, or faith. Essentially, for him, for Venerable Jnanadeepa, saddha, or faith, was the entire backbone of his practice. And that is what allowed him. He had an immense, remarkable amount of saddha, or faith, unlike most people in the world. And that is what allowed him to not only be a monk for his entire life from the age of 25 until his death at the age of 75. He ordained at age 25 and he died at age 75. So having this immense amount of saddha, or faith, is what allowed him to remain a monk for his entire life from the age of 25 until his death at the age of 75. And it is also what allowed him to face these numerous difficulties and hardships throughout his life as a monk. One of them being that he never had a living, breathing teacher to guide him. He was ordained at the age of 25 at Polgastua Aranya, or Island Hermitage, near Galle in the southwest of Sri Lanka. It's a forest monastery in the southwest of Sri Lanka, and near Galle. And so right after he got ordained as a Samanera, he left Island Hermitage and he went off on his own. He had concerns about the standards of training there, which according to him at the time were in a state of decline. And so he left the monastery and went off on his as a Samanera, right after getting ordained as a Samanera. And so, of course, this is immensely difficult to go off on your own as a monk and not have a teacher. He had no living, breathing teacher to guide him. He only had the suttas and vinaya, the texts. And so, despite this, despite not having a living, breathing teacher to guide him, Venerable Ñāṇadipa still persevered, and he strove on in his practice. And he never once in his entire life as a monk had a living, breathing teacher. He only had the texts, the suttas and vinaya. So that's immensely, immensely difficult for one to practice alone without a living, breathing teacher or a living, breathing example. And so another thing to point out about Venerable Ñāṇadipa is that he faced immense difficulties during his life as a monk with wild animals. He was attacked by dangerous wild animals on numerous occasions. He was attacked by an elephant and he survived, thankfully. But he was attacked by very dangerous wild animals on numerous occasions during his life as a monk. But this did not deter him from being a monk and from pursuing the life of an austere forest monk. And pursuing this did not deter him. These things did not deter him from pursuing complete and total nibbana in this life itself. These things did not deter him from pursuing complete and total nibbana in this life itself. These, dangerous wild animals attacking him. And of course, this not having a living, breathing teacher to guide him. And so he also faced difficulties with the food here in Sri Lanka. The food in Sri Lanka is it can be very spicy. And so he also, has had physical health issues related to the spicy food. He also had, physical health issues with, there was one time where he where he contracted a parasitic infection. So he had immense difficulties, during his life as a monk. But none of these things deterred him from pursuing complete and total nibbana in this life itself. And the reason for that is because he had a lot of saddha, or faith. And so essentially saddha, or faith, was the entire backbone of his practice and his life as a monk. And so taking Venerable Ñāṇadipa's example, and also another thing to remember about him is that he was a Westerner. He was from Denmark. He was a Westerner from Denmark. And, he was living in Sri Lanka, a country that was not his homeland, that was far away from his home country, his homeland, where, Sri Lanka, of course, the language is different from Denmark, different from the West in general. The language in Sri Lanka is different from or faith, and a whole lot of it too, in order to be able to progress along this path and attain Nibbana, which is the goal of Lord Buddha's teachings. And so one of the ways that one can develop faith, saddha, or faith in the Dhamma, is they can reflect on, for one, how the Dhamma addresses concerns about life and about the human existence in ways that essentially no other religion or spiritual path does. So the Dhamma, Lord Buddha's teachings, addresses many of the questions about life that essentially all other religions and spiritual paths cannot address, are unable to address. So Lord Buddha, taught the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, the truth that suffering comes from craving, clinging, and attachment, the truth that there is cessation of suffering, that there is an ending to suffering, that there is an end of suffering, and the truth that the Noble Eightfold Path is the way out of suffering, is the way to ending suffering. And so these are teachings, just the Four Noble Truths alone. These are teachings that are not found in any other religion or spiritual path in the world. So just that alone can tell one can tell just from reading the Four Noble Truths or hearing about the Four Noble Truths that this path, these teachings, this Dhamma that Lord Buddha taught, it really means something. It really deeply means something. And there clearly, this man, Lord Buddha, clearly he knew what he was talking about. If he is saying what absolutely is the truth. That's why the Four Noble Truths are called the Four Noble Truths, because they are the truth. They are undeniable truths. If one just looks around in the world, one will be able to observe these Four Noble Truths, that they are real, that they are the truth. And so one can understand just from reading or hearing about the Four Noble Truths that this path, the Dhamma, really, truly, and deeply means something. That it is unlike any other religion or spiritual path in the world. And that it addresses the realities of life and of the human existence and of the human condition in ways that no other religion or spiritual path in the world does or is able to. And so that is one way that one can gain saddha or faith in Lord Buddha and in his teachings, the Dhamma. And so another way that one can gain faith in Lord Buddha and his teachings, the Dhamma, is that one can see the Dhamma being practiced by other people in real life. One of the most powerful things is a living, breathing example. One of the most powerful reminders that the Dhamma is real and that it is alive, even in this day and age, is a living, breathing example. One of the most powerful reminders that the Dhamma is real and alive, even in this day and age, is a living, breathing example. So, if one observes other people in real life practicing the Dhamma and having faith in Lord Buddha and his teachings, the Dhamma, one can gain saddha or faith from that. So if one goes to temples or monasteries and they see lay people offering dana, offering requisites, food and other requisites to monks and nuns, they can see that there are people in the world who are following Lord Buddha's teachings, who are sincerely following Lord Buddha's teachings, who are sincerely following the Dhamma, and who are sincerely changing as human beings as a result of their faith in Lord Buddha and as a result of their faith in the Dhamma. They are changing in the sense, just these lay people who are giving requisites, alone, even if they are not meditating per se, they are still changing as human beings. In the sense that they are becoming more generous. They are giving up greed and stinginess and developing generosity, practicing generosity by giving requisites to monks and nuns and by supporting temples and monasteries. And so one can also gain faith, saddha or faith, in Lord Buddha and in his teachings, the Dhamma, by seeing monks and nuns, and lay people as well, practicing the Dhamma in the form of meditation. Practicing or undertaking further sila, more precepts, becoming more moral and virtuous as a result of undertaking more precepts and further or higher sila, and practicing meditation, developing the mind through meditation, or bhavana, as it's called in Pali, as it's known as in Pali. And so one can see that a person who is keeping just the 5 precepts alone, maintaining the 5 precepts alone, a person who does that is already becoming more moral and virtuous of a person than most other people in the world. By giving up killing other beings, by giving up the destroying of life, by giving up stealing or the taking of what is not given, by giving up sexual misconduct, by giving up telling lies, by giving up telling deliberate lies, and using false speech, and also harsh and abusive and divisive and idle speech, and by giving up or refraining from consuming drugs and alcohol, substances that cause intoxication and lead to heedlessness. So one can see just from observing a person who is undertaking the 5 precepts that this person who is undertaking the 5 precepts, who is maintaining the 5 precepts in their everyday life, is already becoming more moral and virtuous of a human being than most other people in the world. They are already different from most other people in the world in the sense that their mind is changing, their attitudes are changing, their behavior is changing, and their character is changing. This person is undergoing a character change, a behavioral change, a change in behavior. And so observing this can give one faith in the Dhamma, faith in Lord Buddha and faith in the Dhamma. And then, of course, if someone is practicing higher sila and following more precepts, such as celibacy, refraining from all sexual activity, and refraining from eating after midday, refraining from consuming solid food after midday. By observing this, by observing someone following more precepts and following higher sila, such as celibacy, refraining from all sexual activity, and not eating in the afternoon and evening, by observing this, one can gain faith, saddha or faith in Lord Buddha and in his teachings, the Dhamma, because they can understand that, Lord Buddha in the suttas and Vinaya, in the texts, he talks about, celibacy, about how celibacy is necessary for progressing on the path. And here in real life, I can see that here is a person who is actually celibate. And not only are they celibate, but they are enjoying being celibate. They are happy being celibate. They are practicing celibacy without, hopefully, too many problems. And so, but they are still able to practice celibacy. I can see that. So, this is another thing that can give someone saddha or faith, that will allow someone to gain saddha or faith in Lord Buddha and in his teachings, the Dhamma, is observing this higher sila, observing people in real life practicing or undertaking this higher sila and more precepts, such as the 8 precepts or 10 precepts, or in the case of bhikkhus, fully ordained Buddhist monks, the 227 rules in the Patimokkha, and seeing someone in real life practicing celibacy and refraining from eating in the afternoon and evening. And so another thing that can give someone saddha or faith in Lord Buddha and in his teachings, the Dhamma, is practicing the Dhamma. So by practicing the Dhamma, by undertaking the precepts, by keeping and maintaining the precepts, by living a moral and virtuous life, by practicing meditation regularly, one can begin to really progress in their practice. So this, and get and start to get rid of these defilements that plague the mind, that repeatedly and consistently plague the mind. And so from actually practicing the Dhamma, from actually undertaking the precepts, undertaking sila, keeping and maintaining the precepts, maintaining sila, and practicing meditation regularly, and progressing on the path as a result of those things, one can gain saddha or faith in Lord Buddha and in his teachings, the Dhamma, because one will, as a result of that, one will begin to see the benefits of the practice in themselves. So I am changing. I am changing as a human being. I am becoming wiser, kinder, more compassionate, more calm, more peaceful. And I am changing as a human being. I am becoming more moral and virtuous as a human being. And so this can give someone saddha, this will give someone saddha or faith